question we get from clients here at Argo Translation is, how do I properly budget for website translation? So there's a few key points you'll want to consider. One of those is, how will you connect to the translation management provider? In other words, how will you transfer data from your website to the translation firm? And that can be done via a connection, and that's usually via a plugin, and with most popular CMSs that's certainly possible. But just remember, if your site is static and you don't think it's going to change very often, that might not be important. If you think it's going to be a very dynamic site with a lot of changes, you may want to consider that connection, but there could be a cost for that plugin and also for that setup. The next question is content. You'll really want to give some consideration to what parts of your website will you translate. For example, will you translate your blog? Is there a news section that you'll do? Will everything be included? Have that well thought out before you discuss this with your translation service provider. And you'll also want to have a list of URLs ready. So in other words, have a list of the pages and the corresponding URLs ready to provide the translation service company so they can give you an estimate. Because all too often we'll get the question that says, how much does my site cost to translate? And really, that's very difficult. It'll be tough to get an apples-to-apples comparison if you're going from vendor to vendor for quotes, unless you have a fixed basket of content. So that list of URLs is very important. And you'll also want to consider maintenance, or what will you do once the site is launched? Will you do releases every month, every week, every quarter? That's something that you should advise the service provider about. Last but not least, is if you have a contact us page or landing pages or places where clients will contact you, you have to consider, how will you reach out to them? If they write to you in a foreign language that now your site is translated into, how will you reach out? How will you manage the incoming content? And how will you contact them in return or respond? Those are all important points when discussing website translation and budgets with your service provider.